Choya sampo pa gyu trashi apa Tuche tempe tinle yarngoda Pelge drolor zampe zepareche Pande lame shabla solvade Omo a guru vajra dara suma timonisha sane karm Uta vardanya shri bhadra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum Om guru vajra dara suma timonisha sane karm Uta vardanya shri bhadra varsa manya sarva siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhar Soma Timo Nishasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hong. Dagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tseje Ningne Solwa Debetse Dejen Korlo Visu Lekshune Yila Sambe Deden Malupa Geme Lunge Drupra Jinge Lo Tsoni Sodan Digdun Shapetse Dunge Namke Yinsu Lekshune Labchen Tsoni Yonso Zopadan Cherani dun chamra jinge loa chancho parge ninsen tuguntu niu peme siudru lekshune chancho drube gegen kunshishi tungen dela drubra jinge loba dagi lona chola chokpa dan chemi samchur ngemba shiwa dan chodan tumbe deden malupa beme lunge drubra jinge loa dorna tingne tira tamche dan teche pardune kabatam Rese kyamne lama keleme tukje chinge dala sikso so gongyab drewe nyamda dachala jetsun lame tuje rab gongne kodan sunge nawa drame tu nyam sunyongwe kesan toprasho kewa kunto yanda lama dan drame cheki pela longchechi sadan lamge yenten rabzone dorje change kopa nyur tobe sho Pakyuke kodan dagi alu Pakyuke sundan dagi nga Pakyuke tudan dagi yim Ten yerme çıktı çinge alu Makyuke kodan dagi alu Makyuke sundan dagi nga Makyuke tudan dagi yi Ten yerme çıktı çinge alu Om Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Sashipeki Choi Shiameto Tamare Raba Lingashi Niedegem Sange Shinto Mikte shin la che par sho yedam guru ratna mandrala kam niryata yami. Sangye chedan soge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye druparesho sangye chedan soge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparasho sangye chodan sogi chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Haye ke da luda ne chin ke drubundan da mi ke nam dan droba kunge dhanam chi tsampa tamche ke to dagi che ten to.
Good morning. There's a concept, a vision, a view that personally has always helped me a lot. Is having a high objective, a low expectation, and a constant effort. One of the things that it's difficult for us when we start a new path or some kind of activity, maybe helping someone, doing any kind of activity. It's normal that when we start something, an action, that we have in our mind an idea of what we want to do, where we want to go. I'm going to take a road. Where is it that where do I want to go? When do I want to get there? What time do I want to get there? We have an idea. What happens is sometimes the experience, the conditions in which we find ourselves make it so that the reality that comes out is it doesn't correspond to our expectations, and this can generate a lot of frustration. This often it makes us think, oh, it shouldn't be like this. I mean, why shouldn't it be like that? Because I thought that it was going to be different. But why? I mean, because I thought, is it because that I thought it was going to be different, that it should have been? Am I God, and that the way I think things should be should become like that? But somehow we think like that. I mean, often we set this, we have this burden. I have my idea. It should be like this, that, or the other. Instead, when we realize that things aren't like that, they can actually be much different, and we're upset about that. And something that we really need to make peace with is having objectives. We give ourselves a direction, have objectives, and at the same time, though, not have high expectations, have low expectations. And someone sometimes asks me, how can I make peace with these things? I mean, it's not having objectives. It's almost as if I've just given up. And if I didn't have any kind of expectation, then it would kind of keep me from having an objective. But what happens is actually the following, from my point of view: to have low expectations. That means that we have an attitude of humbleness in front of reality. We're aware that our experiencing reality is the situations that we live, the situations we find ourselves. It's very complex, and there's an infinite number of causes and conditions and situations of every kind that make the present as it is. And we don't have this ability to foresee what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. I mean, we just don't have this ability. At least I don't. I don't know about you. If someone has it, please tell me about it, and we can use it. But I've never known anyone. One of the great qualities of Lama Ganchen was having a very, very far-reaching vision, view, and sometimes things went the way he foresaw, and sometimes not. He would see potential, and he would invest in that potential. I spent I spent a lot of time planting seeds. Some gave fruit and some didn't. So I recognize the potential, and I put my energy towards that potential. Maybe someone accepts the fact that they don't have total control over what happens, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, etc., etc. So we try also to avoid this kind of attitude where we set an objective towards myself or towards others. I act to go in that direction. Things don't go the way I was expecting, and I look for the guilty one. I look for someone to blame. We shouldn't try to look for the one to blame. We should learn how things go, and then redirect ourselves. I'm just going to open and close something technical here today. I'm really happy that there's a little bit of noise. There's a little bit of, means that things are working, and so and we have a technical solution that this is for those here for listening. You can put on the headphones, and you can listen to me directly, or the translation on number 2. But anyway, closing that parentheses, getting back to us. So we set an objective. We set an expectation of how things are supposed to go. And there shouldn't be great projects. The example for this morning, for example, I go to the Gompa, to listen to Lojong teachings. In my concept of going to the Gompa, I have an idealized image of how it's supposed to go. If my reality doesn't correspond to how I thought it was supposed to be, then I start asking myself, who's to blame here? Oh, this one's doing like this, that one should be like that, etc., etc. And this just takes up space in our minds. And often, when the reality doesn't match up, we start thinking that we're just not able, we're just not going to manage. Let's remember that when we talk about our path and transforming our habits and our attitudes, it's a path of little bit at a time with constancy. And we don't have this ability to see how and when we'll be able to develop certain qualities. So it's important to have clarity about what we want, but at the same time have this ability to adapt ourselves to the situations that we meet. Let's remember that, as we said these days, our objective isn't to get there in a hurry. Our objective is to walk in the right direction. This is really important. We're adapting to every situation, every context. The last part of yesterday, the last part that we saw yesterday has to do with the developing awareness and directing with clarity our thoughts, our emotions. So, if we were to have emotions the so-called mental defilements that arise, we should not give them space. We not follow them. We should be able to do that. Try to do that. Another important aspect of this that we looked at yesterday is that our senses have a particular characteristic. I saw when I was a boy during a music lesson, I saw this clearly. In that music lesson, I remember very quickly and very clearly that our teacher, she put music from an orchestra that was playing and started asking us if it was possible to direct our hearing. If we were able to distinguish the instruments and put our attention onto one instrument or another, and it is possible. It's a really beautiful experience. Our senses can be directed. We have this ability to give attention to one thing and to take away our attention to something else. And in our development of awareness, this allows us also to direct our attention towards the objects that we think are more beneficial. This is also one of the important techniques when we want to develop concentration. I remember the teacher of a friend of mine who had been many years meditating in a kind of cave, a kind of half cave, half mountain hut near Dharamsala. After like 12 years, he came back to the city, and he went back to his monastery where he came from. And the monastery tried to give him the quietest room possible, the quietest place possible, where because he had been for years in the mountains meditating, and at the beginning he accepted. But every morning he would get up before dawn and he would walk, and it wasn't that close, he would go to a friend's house. And this house was right in front of the bus station. It was the most chaotic place of all the city. I don't know if you have an idea what a bus station in India could be. Very chaotic, incredibly noisy, etc. And this house had a small balcony that looked onto the bus station. I mean, the noisiest part of the station. And he would go there very early in the morning. He would sit on the small balcony, and he would do his meditations in the middle of this chaos. So instead of staying in a quiet place, he would expressly go to where there was more noisy. One might ask why. My interpretation is that when we're able to develop a level, like a more elevated level of concentration, we need to gradually maintain that concentration, even in contexts where there are distractions, because we can direct our senses. And we will often find ourselves in situations where there are distractions, where there's so-called interferences, things that come in one way or another. It's not the way we want it. I'm here, and instead I hear this noise, or I have this pain here, I have this, that, and the other. Our senses are they're always very stimulated, and often there are distractions. There are things that take our attention. And it's important for us to know how to direct our attention one way or another. It's like driving. When we're driving, if while we're driving we gave attention to everything that appeared to our senses, then we'd soon have an accident, because we'd say, oh, look how beautiful this is, look at that. You know, it's very different to be a passenger than a driver. As the passenger starts seeing things that as a driver you never do see. So what happens is, in our daily life, it's as if we're driving, where we put our attention on to one objective, one trajectory, and the other things that come up, I mean, we see them, but we just let them go. We don't give any importance to them. And similarly, when we have an objective, there will be many things that pass by, that could take away our attention, but we can, with awareness, bring our attention specifically on our objective. You know, just like in the same way we direct our hearing. Instead of hearing this, I put my attention to listen to this other thing. Okay, good. So let's go on, because today we have two verses that are, I mean, they're all important, but they're two that are very connected. And I wanted to leave then we'll have 2 more days. I wanted to give to give more attention to the Tonlen meditation of giving and receiving. So let's go to the verses of today. The verse of today is based on the previous verse. In reality, it's in the 8 trainings. They like a crescendo. The first verse, we have this. What's the training? Is to have clarity of our objective, to not have an objective. Our desire isn't towards an idealized reality or this materialistic utopia, but we want this so-called nirvana. We want to get out of samsara, reach a profound state of peace to help others do the same. And with this objective, every being becomes incredibly important for us, fundamental for us, and we generate gratitude towards them. The second verse, we look at our own identity, and we train in not comparing ourselves to others. We try to look at ourselves without comparing to others, And at the same time, that second part of this training is to put ourselves at the service of others, understanding that the objective of the other is our own. And the objective of others, we're not talking about the desires of others. We're talking about the happiness, the real happiness of others. And the third training, we saw that on the basis of that, I need to then direct my mind and my actions. And so, no matter what I'm doing, no matter what the context is, with self-awareness and watching the flow of my mind as soon as a mental defilement arises, given that it is harmful to me, to myself, and to others, with determination, with strength, I stop it. And this is the third training. So in this third point, the third training, there are some aspects. We have self-awareness. We have recognizing mental defilements as something to abandon, as what is harmful to ourselves and to others is also a very important aspect. We need to be able to see a mental defilement as something to abandon, because often we see our mental defilements as a reaction that is just like as a justified reaction, like anger, for example. When these mental defilements come out, often people say, oh, but did you see what happened? Did you see what that person said here and there? And so we see that emotional state of ours as a justified reaction, that is the right reaction given what happened, when instead it's harmful mostly to ourselves, because it doesn't resolve anything. So in that third training, there's this awareness more and more that the mental defilements that take away the state of peace are harmful to us and to others. So we recognize that they are to be abandoned, and there's no excuses whatsoever. There's no reason whatsoever to justify anger, jealousy, envy, arrogance, attachment, miserliness. We need to get to this conclusion. Doesn't matter what happens. It's not a reason to get angry or jealous. I mean, it doesn't resolve anything, and it only hurts me. I can face the situation in many different ways, but these emotions are harmful to me, and they're harmful to others, and so they need to be avoided. They need to be opposed, eliminated, in the sense not nourished, and not given any kind of space. Once they're not nourished, gradually it's a way to go against them. That's what we've seen so far. So on the basis of this, we start with this.
Shinnembe simcheni diktun trakbu nun tongse rinchin terdan trebashing nyebar kawe chinzin sho.
Every time, whenever I see beings instinctively cruel, overpowered by negativities and serious problems, may I cherish them as difficult to find as discovering a treasure of gems. Let's explain this better. Rangshing nimpa semchen ni dituk tapo nong tong shik. Rangshing means nature. In this context, it means almost spontaneous, something that's present, not present just once in a while, but with a constant presence. Nyempe means negative. So someone who has a bad nature, a bad character, a bad personality. I mean, there are people, unfortunately, who are so strongly conditioned by anger, hate, resentment, jealousy, attachment, arrogance, the attachment to power or whatever it is, that a big part of their lives is taken by this emotion or these emotions. This is what it refers to. Rashene parasemcheni diktu trapo non ton tse. When I see, tse means when, ton means to see beings that are overpowered. Nun means like overpowered, crushed by strong, non-virtuous problems and problems, and taken by these strong negative conditionings. So in my life, mostly people, we're talking about people, I see people who are strongly taken by the mental defilements with a certain constancy, which doesn't mean that their nature is that. It means that in this context, nature is not the ultimate nature. It's almost like it's something momentary, but it's strongly present. So if we were to meet people who directly or indirectly, because has it ever happened to get angry with someone you've never met, or maybe someone you've read about in the newspapers? Sometimes I think, oh, poor politicians, every once in a while, because I too speak for myself. I've never seen this person, I've never met this person, but there's this projection. Now I'm not going into justifying, protecting, or whatever, but what I mean to say is that it could happen that someone blames someone or generates aversion towards someone who in reality doesn't know, or maybe even historical figures, that historical figures who lived many years ago. Whenever I see, if I were to meet someone directly or indirectly, someone who is absolutely crushed, overpowered by non-virtuous actions, dik, and suffering, duk, they go together. Often they go together, dik. So one who acts with aggression or with violence, who is strongly has strong attachments and is strongly selfish and aggressive. If we were to find someone who is strongly taken by his mental defilements and actions, non-virtuous actions, then rinchen terdan trepashine parkewa chetsin shok. It's as if I found a precious treasure of gems. Ter is treasure. Treba means to meet, and shin, as if. It's as if I were to meet a very precious treasure that's nebarkawa. It's very difficult to find. Keyword attention shock. May I cherish it. It's as if I found a very precious and rare treasure of gems. Why seeing someone that we would say bad, a bad person, someone taken by violence, etc., etc., why see them as precious, as a precious treasure, something incredibly valuable and difficult to find? Why give value to them? Our tendency would be, if we were to be in front of someone full of love and kindness, etc., someone that in our view is absolutely wonderful, a bodhisattva, someone very, very good, and then on the other hand, we have someone that we think is really bad, taken by hate and anger, etc., etc. Cruel. So who would we give more value to? To the good one, and the other one instead we want him far away. You know, we have aversion. I don't want to see you. Get far away from me. Go away. Two names come to my mind. You know, two stereotypes, if you will. You know, we've got Maria Teresa on one side and Hitler on the other. You know, which would be our treasure? We go towards Mother Teresa without a doubt, but here it tells us the opposite. Why? Why do we generate aversion to, and we walk away from those who we deem negative, wrong, cruel, bad? I mean, this is what we're talking about. Is it a sentient being or not? You know, perhaps a Buddha showing himself as someone with cruelty, but that's a very, very low probability. So we find ourselves in front of a being who, taken by his own mental defilements, acts in a violent, aggressive way, creating suffering for himself and for others. In our natural way of being, we do a kind of, how can you say, a kind of, we make a shortcut, you know, we reach a wrong conclusion, which would be, if I love you, it means that I agree with what you do, with who you are and what you do. If I have compassion for you, if I have a kind of attraction towards you, if I love you, it means that I agree with you. There's also a Tibetan proverb that is quite similar to the Italian one. Let's see. It says, and also the English one, the garden of it, the grass is always greener on the other side. And in Tibetan they add, and one's own children are always right. So it's the yard of the neighbor is always greener, and one's children is always right. But what happens if we know someone to whom we have a strong attraction, a friend, a teacher, and then at a certain point we see him or her act in a way that we don't agree with, and then we have someone else to whom we have a strong aversion, who does the same kind of action. Do we react towards each one in the same way, or is it different? What do we do towards those for whom we have a strong attraction when they act in a way that we don't agree with? We try to justify it. Oh yeah, okay, but poor guy, you know, you can see this is a difficult time. It's certainly there's a reason behind this. You see, I mean, look at what happened, you know, and then we blame someone else or something else. We try to justify. Because why? Well, because he's my friend. And if I say, and if I find myself in conflict because I love that person, but at the same time that person has done something that I don't agree with, so there's conflict inside me, and I try to justify that person. The opposite example, someone for whom I have a strong aversion, who does something that's something horrible. I'm sorry. If someone we have aversion to someone, and that person does something praiseworthy, then we say, no, I don't think that really happened, or you know, we really try to minimize it. You know, how can I see something positive in someone for whom I have aversion? We look for some kind of coherence. But there's a fundamental point here that is loving you doesn't mean agreeing with everything you do, everything that you are. Loving you means giving importance to your happiness. I love you. That means that your happiness is important to me. And I can always judge your actions, because here once again we're looking at judging. We judging actions and not people. We talked about this yesterday. Because I love you. I want you to be happy. I wish you everything good, you know. But I can condemn an action, but that doesn't take away the love that I feel for you. In the same way, I can see someone who acts in a horrible way, and you know, but that doesn't keep me from loving that person, because if I love you, it doesn't mean that I agree with what you do. If it were like that, the great bodhisattvas, they either they agree with everyone or they love no one. No? Instead, the fact that it's hard for us to love someone and to allow ourselves to love someone who, according to us, acts wrongly is just a manifestation of our own ego. Because I love those who act the way I think they should act. So we're looking for some kind of exchange somehow. And it's important to be able to see the other and allow ourselves to love him independently of what he does or doesn't do. Why do I love you? I love you because you exist. Why do I have compassion for you? Because you suffer. There's a verse in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara that reminds us, the precise words I don't remember, but the verse says, suffering, it should be eliminated as suffering, no matter who it is, no matter who is suffering. So we don't get into the judgment of you deserve or you're undeserving. You know, everyone has created their own causes, and I'm not the one to say who is worthy and who and to decide what that result is. Instead, we're here to open up our own hearts, and one of the most important points is opening our hearts to everyone, because in the previous verses we said, you know, wherever I am, and no matter with whom I find myself. So, and when you're in front of, you know, the bad guy, or the one who acts in a way that you totally disagree with, even there too, we need to open up our hearts. What happens is, if my objective is really to get out of my own samsara and help others get out of their samsara, if that's my objective, to develop my qualities to their maximum potential, these qualities, as we said, are love and compassion. That's the part of method and the part of wisdom. In the story of Asanga that we saw, Asanga develops love the moment in which he's able to, when he comes into contact with a sick dog, so he could develop that quality. Then if we're able to love a being unconditionally, that naturally makes us love unconditionally everyone, every being. When we find ourselves in front of someone who acts in a way that we don't agree with, like say this is the stereotype of the evil person, it's a marvelous opportunity to go beyond our own ego and try to love in unconditionally. In other words, if I'm able with sincerity to love my enemy, I won't have any problem loving my friends or anyone else. It's a treasure. It's a special opportunity. Also because when I find myself in front of someone who acts in a way that I don't agree with, it upsets me. In reality, what's happening is there's something, there's a part of my ignorance and my egoism, that selfishness that reacts to that. It doesn't mean that I'm in front of someone who acts, it doesn't mean that we should say, I love everyone. If you're in front of someone who reacts with strong aggression and violence, I can condemn the action, the feeling of hate and anger and that way of acting and thinking, and I ask myself, how can I help you? How can I help you? How can I interact with you so that you are able to change these bad habits of yours and get out of your suffering and stop hurting yourself and others? But I love you in this same way I love everyone else or anyone else. The example is, I'm walking along the road at night. It's dark, and at a certain point, I find myself in front of a man who's, let's say, who's raping a girl. So for us, it's just a very clear symbol of strong violence against it's a strong violence against someone who is without any kind of defense. And do we say, oh, poor guy with his mental defilements, no. I mean, we see that this is an action that is not good for either one. This action is not only harmful to the one who is being harmed, the girl, but it's also harmful to the one who's doing the action, long term especially. So there I think to myself, how can I stop this action? Do I need to use strength to, because I don't think I could go to this person and say, excuse me, I love you so much. This is not good for you. You shouldn't act like this. Maybe you should stop acting like this. Maybe it's so shocking that, it would be so shocking. Maybe it would work. Like once in Milan, before Albagnano, at the center, there was our dear friend, Teresa Turicchia. And she wouldn't sleep at night, and she would just vagabond through the center. And once robbers came, and she opened the window because she heard that they were trying to break in, and she looked at them and she said, she had this tiny little voice. She goes, excuse me, the Gompa hours are from 11 to 1, and they just got scared and ran away. And another time in Milan at that time, I mean, there were many robberies in Milan. Another time, they got into the Gompa, and then she touched them, said, who are you? And she ran away. But in this case, I don't think by saying, I love you, like imagine that wouldn't work in a situation like this. So let's say that I go there, and the tool that I find to stop that action of great violence that brings suffering to both. Let's say that I need to use strength. Okay, so I go there, I use my strength, I stop that man, and I'm able to push him to the ground. Once he's on the ground, and I can, put the make sure that the girl is safe. Huh? What do I do? Do I just keep kicking him and beating him and yelling, you horrible person with a tremendous amount of aversion? Because the tendency is to think, poor girl, attraction and compassion towards the girl, and hate and aversion towards the one who is being violent. But Lojong tells us, no, I try to stop it, and I think, how can I help this person? And they're both victims. He's a victim of his own mental defilements. He's a victim of his social context in which he grew up, and all the experiences that took him to this cycle of suffering and violence. So the attitude is not to favor one or the other, but to see the suffering also in the one who acts with violence and aggression, which doesn't mean, oh, poor guy, let him do it. No, I'm going to help you. I'm helping you by stopping you, but I don't hate you. I don't feel anger towards you. I have compassion towards you. I want you to be well. Your happiness, your well-being is as important as anyone else. Being in front of a similar situation, being in front of a situation like this and giving the same importance of the importance of happiness to both, without taking away the responsibility of the actions. I'm not saying that action is not negative, that it shouldn't be stopped, that there aren't consequences. I'm not saying any of that. But the inner attitude, the awareness that I should be acting with, is that the happiness of lives of both are important, and they should have the same value. I don't know if this example is clear. So this is not our tendency. Our tendency is to try to protect those who are more similar to us. Because if I get there and I see that, if I see that it's a friend, a family member, someone close to me, I could even just make strange reasonings and to justify that person. I've seen this happen, where we can try to give even blame to the girl, like where we hear this, how was she dressed, this happens because one is trying to defend the other, because these games of attraction and aversion. So what we're talking about instead is that each one is important. They're both important here. And if we want to follow the path of the bodhisattva, we need to train in giving the same level of importance to both. This means that we need to do the same towards. Does this mean that we need to do the same towards, act the same towards everyone? No. The other day, for example, something happened, or just something, nothing important, but it made me reflect. I was showing an image to someone, and at a certain point, another person came close and says, oh, I want to see it too. And I said, no. Oh, why not? And I said, and my answer was, it's not everything is for everyone. And the person said, and equanimity? And it's exactly there. Equanimity is found in the fact that not everything is for everyone. Equanimity, everything for everyone if everyone was the same, but being equanimous doesn't mean acting the same for everyone, but it means giving the same value of happiness towards everyone. Just imagine parents with 5 children, for example. If doing the same for everyone, doing the same for everything, doing the same for everyone, maybe one makes a mistake, and that would mean spanking all 5 of them, No, but equanimity is giving the importance to everyone, importance to everyone in the same way, and I adapt myself to the needs of each one. So towards one, I should act in a kinder way, and maybe the other with more firmness, be more strict. But my objective is the same. I want to help each one reach a state of peace, to free himself from his own mental defilements, to overcome his gross and subtle sufferings along the path of the bodhisattva, where, and this is what the 8 verses are training us in. There's a fundamental principle of equanimity. Equanimity, there are many levels of equanimity. In this context, means also to not have attraction to some and aversion to others. Starting from the assumption that all suffer and everyone wants to be free of suffering. Everyone wants to be happy, and at the end, on the level of the suffering, a gross level of suffering, maybe someone is worse off than another. But as far as all permeating suffering is concerned, if I look at the girl who's the victim, and I look at the man who acts with violence, he's really bad off too, isn't he? If we consider the mental defilements, karma, and polluted body and mind, he's really bad off too. So they're in the same boat. There shouldn't be more aversion or attraction towards one or the other. Each one of us, instead, if we find ourselves in different moments in this cycle of suffering, and I repeat, without judging the person, but judging the actions helps us to become more equanimous. So here, where it says, should I see beings who act with cruelty, who are taken by destructive emotions and act so badly, even in our daily lives, directly or indirectly, instead of generating aversion towards them, we should say, no, they really, really need help. And what I want is to develop more and more love. I really want to open up my heart unconditionally, and this is an amazing opportunity to do that. If I have someone in front of me, it's the example that I used before, the girl and the rapist, the violent man. If I were to choose which one to take care of, which one would be a better opportunity to help me love unconditionally, taking care of the girl or taking care of him? Taking care of him, the man. I don't know why, but it's a little bit connected. It reminds me of a story that I saw. It was a boy, quite young. He killed his girlfriend and her children in a moment of great anger and hate. I don't know. It's something very, very heavy. The mother of the girl, and so the grandmother of the children who were killed, at a certain point, she adopts the man who had killed them, and she raises him, and she really took care of him as her own child, and he wasn't even the father of the children who had been killed. When I saw this, and in this story they were both talking, this ability to go beyond one's own pain, one's own view, and see the other. This lady would say, I cured my pain by helping the other, seeing the other. So there are people who really put this into practice. It's not just science fiction, and it's possible for all of us. So when we find ourselves in front of someone who acts in a way that we don't agree with, even in our daily lives, instead of being taken by our attraction, aversion, friends and enemies, because today, I mean, you just need to ask a few questions to someone to then be placed in to place them in the category of friend and enemy. And sometimes it's enough just just the way someone is dressed is enough, or a choice that one has made for their own health, let's say, to have attraction or aversion towards someone. So what we need to overcome if we want to follow this path is this division of friend and enemy, and instead have everyone as friends, have everyone as beings to love, and not make distinctions. But in this process, what's the real test? Where should we really train to love unconditionally? Not with our friends, but with those who act in ways that we don't agree with. Not as a sacrifice, oh, I need to also love the one who was so bad. It has nothing to do with forgiveness either. I mean, forgiveness is a term that doesn't even exist in Tibetan. Exists the verb to forgive, understood as I was wrong, I ask forgiveness, and you accept my and you accept them. But we shouldn't forgive someone who acts something badly. We need to separate these actions from the person and not judge the person, but judge the actions and love the person independently of what he's done or not done, and try to help him or her change his conduct, making sure that those actions are not repeated. Because when we're able to separate the things, so actions are one thing and the person is another. I want that person to be happy. I want those types of actions. I don't want him to repeat those actions. So if we're able to make this distinction, then it becomes easier to love someone who's, quote unquote, evil, bad. It doesn't it? And Gunilamala was the example at the time of Buddha. He was this assassin who killed 999 people, and at a certain point became a disciple of Buddha. And he welcomed him with a lot of love and changed his life completely. It's because he was accepted with love, with affection, independently of what he had done. But it's not that he wasn't welcome saying, oh, what you did was good, and so we welcome you, to be part of us. No. What he did was a huge, huge error, but that doesn't mean that we don't love you. We love you, and we don't want you to repeat those actions. That's part of loving you. Coming back to us in our daily lives, I mean, it can happen that we can be in front of people who act in ways that we don't agree with. You know, in the life that close to us, or maybe people that we encounter through media, or, far away. Often, I hear, "Oh, shouldn't do like this. It's not admissible. This is horrible." I mean, this happens now. Think about one of these people, one of these situations, and let's try to see that person in that context. This gives us the opportunity to love him or her, and we being able to love that person in reality, this gives us the opportunity to transcend our own level of selfish love, that goes beyond my desires, my attractions and aversions. And if I'm able to love that one person, I really am taking a huge step in this positive direction. And it's even the people around close to me. It's not because you do things that I don't agree with that I can't love you. It can happen, no? So every time, whenever I see beings instinctively cruel, overpowered by negativities and serious problems, it should be the non-virtuous actions and suffering. May I cherish them as difficult to find as discovering a treasure of gems. May I cherish them like a treasure of gems, a precious and rare treasure of gems. What is a treasure? It's something precious. Precious means it has a potential to do something good. Because having 50 kilos of diamonds in the middle of desert without any water, without being able to sell them to anyone, it's absolutely useless. I mean, when do 50 kilos of diamonds become a treasure? When it's a potential of exchange to transform it into something else. Because if I'm in the middle of the desert, what would the treasure would be a bottle of water more than the 50 kilos of diamonds. This is also the basis of economy. But so a treasure is something has a potential that can do good. It's important to us. So it can benefit us. So I find myself in front of this precious treasure. Why is that person who acts with so much cruelty is a precious treasure? Because he allows me to develop the most precious and worthy part of myself. He helps me face what I want to face, which is my own selfishness, my own ego centeredness. And following these teachings, there's a saying at the end: our enemies become our best friends. Because if our enemy, someone who acts in a way, in a cruel, aggressive way, a so-called enemy, allows me who becomes a mirror for me, so I can see my own mental defilements. It allows me to come into contact with me, allows me to come in contact with my most valuable, precious parts of myself, then I thank him deeply. In my small way, what I've observed in my life, every time I've had to face difficult situations where, from my point of view, where I was treated with violence, aggression, or unfairly, normally I don't, tell all the details, because I don't want to generate aversion in anyone. But then you all start thinking about what it could be. But let me say, this was a long time ago, and it was far away from here. But it was a time in my life where I was quite young, and I remember making a prayer, saying a prayer. I was in Borobudur. So I made this prayer, this desire towards Rinpoche. I said, my life is going fine. I can't complain about anything. And then I had this thought: how can I help people tomorrow face their problems if I don't have any real problems myself? And I just needed to ask, because after that they just started coming out, these problems. So one very important point is, today I have gratitude towards those people, towards what happened, because who I am today, in part, is the result of this process, this path that I went through when faced with this situation. So learning how to distinguish that one thing is a person and another thing is an action. Learn how to differentiate between, so you did something very good for me, at one point, and then at another time you did something that was harmful to me. So that doesn't take away the gratitude I have. Not go into to this cycle of not react with aggression, but look at my own priorities. You act with aggression towards me, but what do I want? What's my objective? I'm going to maintain my own position, my own coherence and consistency. So even when I look in the past and look in these situations that I lived, there was this kind of violence was mostly verbal, or these kinds of how do you say, when someone is not judged, but when there was a lot of prejudice, like, you're in this category, you can't come in, so I was discriminated against. There was a strong discrimination, for something that I didn't even do. Anyway, in front of all of this, when I look at it today, I'm deeply grateful, because I had this opportunity, thanks to my masters, through the Dharma, to face these situations in a way where, one, I can say I was able to keep my stability and my equanimity. And I also found myself in the middle of an important conflict, and I was close to both sides. And I saw with great clarity that, that the truth is found between the truths. And one needs to be very careful to not be taken by these games of attraction and aversion. I needed to look again at my priorities and my objectives. And that was enormously important to me. And I'm very, very grateful today. Was it pleasurable to go through all this? Absolutely not. And if I could have avoided it, I'm not sure I would have, because many things came from that process, So if I could have, now if you ask me if I could go back and avoid all that, I'm not sure. The point is I'm very grateful. So difficult situations, when we find ourselves in front of adverse conditions, I mean, there are three types of attitudes we can have. One attitude is where we just pretend that nothing's happening, and this makes a conflict just grow, you know. It's like putting the dirt under the rug, but then, and then at some point you open up, you lift up the rug, and it's an explosion of mess, or we go under the rug ourselves. Another possibility is where I'm in a difficult situation of conflict. I let myself be taken by the conflict. I react with that same language, that same energy, in the same way. You hit me, I hit you back even harder, and we get into a dynamic of conflict. I let myself be taken by the conflict. So normally, when this happens, once the conflict's over, there are lots of scars, and that's absolutely not positive. And the third possibility, which I think is the best, is that when we find ourselves in a situation of conflict, or whatever it is, difficult situation, first of all, we should come back to ourselves and see what we want beyond what the other is doing or not. What is the way, how do I want to act in this situation? And this becomes a choice of awareness. It's not easy, but where we learn as we go forward to be in the conflict without being taken by the conflict, without, where we work in resolving the conflict. We take decisions, we do what we need to do on a practical level without getting into the conflict, without going into that game of attraction and aversion, without being taken by the conflict. We need to really put enormous effort in it, but once you're able, you get out of the conflict. Sooner or later that it ends, and you get out of that situation. You feel stronger and more stable. You feel wiser and with more love. Okay, there might be a scar or two, but we've done it. So these difficult situations, adverse situations, if we face them with a healthy attitude, they are a great opportunity to grow. But we need to be able to see them in that way. So, should I see beings instinctively cruel, negative, evil, etc., etc., instead of criticizing, instead of putting myself against them, what do? I try to look towards them with a feeling of love, without saying that everything's fine, trying to say, okay, this behavior I think needs to be changed. This attitude is not good. We keep our discernment, but without directing the hate and aversion towards the person. And it's precisely because you act negatively towards someone else that I need to help you change. Between we have in the example before, the victim and the rapist, they both need help. They're in very different contexts, but they both need to be taken care of. And Lama Michel Rinpoche, for me, was a marvelous example of this attitude, where Rinpoche, he adapted himself to everyone's reality, and he treated everyone with love, independently of what he did, what he didn't do, and in what context he found himself in. And it's a really important part of our training. But I invite you to not look at things that are too far away, but observe in your own daily life these games of attraction and aversion that you have, or these games of aversions that are based on the conduct of others. Because it happens, doesn't it, to develop aversion towards someone because he acts in a way that we don't agree with. I'd say yes. And when we generate aversion, it's difficult to love that person. It's difficult to give importance to that person's happiness. Instead, but if we divide we separate action from person, then we see these small aversions in our daily, small or big aversions that we have in our daily life. And let's tell ourselves, the fact that you act in a way that I don't agree with doesn't take away the fact that I love you. I love you, and it doesn't matter what happens, I will continue loving you. This is an inner attitude and an external attitude. What happens is the following. Together with love and compassion, we need to also develop wisdom. Wisdom in this specific context is the wisdom of the correct discernment of choices, what to do and how to act. Because if I have 10 people in front of me and I want the happiness, I want their happiness in the same way. Like, for example, if I had 10 children and I love them all the same, but they all have different personalities and they act differently and they're in different situations and times in their lives. Given that I love them in the same way, I need to act towards each one according to their own necessities and needs. Often our problem is that we don't have the wisdom to adapt ourselves to the needs of the other, to see him, to understand him. So our tendency is to give to you what I would give to myself. I see you in a situation, I imagine myself in that situation, and I try to do for you what I would want for myself in that situation, except that we're all different and it doesn't always work. So this means that if I'm in front of a person who acts with violence and aggression, to acting towards love towards that person doesn't mean making a declaration of love, saying I love you, you're marvelous, etc., etc. Because also in our ways of declaring love, we try to justify, I love you because you're marvelous and beautiful and because you've done this, Instead, no, I love you because you exist beyond the fact of, independently of whether you're beautiful or not. But I don't need to declare my love. What I need to do is act with body, speech, and mind in the best way possible towards for what would be the best for you. Often we don't know, and so we just stay still. It's happened to me. I remember once I was in Tibet one year. There was a situation that I didn't like. It was difficult, and I wanted to do something, I wanted to act, and I started to see, like, independently of me wanting to do something, this attachment of being able to do something or being the one to help. Sometimes we have this syndrome of wanting to be the hero and the world's savior, but what does the other person really need in this moment? And in that situation, I realized that in reality, the best action that I could do was to do nothing, because anything I did in that situation, if I went for, or against, I would have done, I would have damaged, let's say I would have hurt them, even if I was trying to help them or wanting to help them, but I didn't have the real tools to find a way to help them. So in this case, it wasn't easy, but I just accepted that the best thing I could have done to help them was doing nothing, because I didn't have the right tools at the moment. Often, we want to be the one who helps, so maybe I think I'm doing something, I think I'm helping, but I'm actually doing damage. And often, sometimes not choosing, not doing, staying still, that is an action. So when we're in front of someone, helping someone do something, out of love, it doesn't necessarily mean showing your love like as a declaration of love. It means that in my actions, I'm giving priority to your well-being and happiness. Not short-term, but mostly the mid and long-term happiness is what we're talking about. Because let's remember, if we go back to the first verse, we're always talking, the assumption that we want to get out of samsara. We don't want just a comfortable samsara. Do we want an external reality the way we want it, to be able to obtain and realize every desire? Or do we want to reach a deep state of peace and satisfaction and balance? If that's my objective, and it's the objective I have for you too, and I love you, I'll try to interact with you in a way to help you reach that state. When we start opening ourselves up to others and start practicing, where we allow ourselves to love those that we don't like and act in what we think is a wrong way, it can be difficult, because we realize, we ask ourselves, what can I do? We can feel incredibly frustrated. I mean, have you ever felt frustrated wanting to help someone and not knowing how? Maybe a child, a friend, a partner, someone close to you. One realizes, when sees the other's not well, wants to help and doesn't know how. It's happened to me. I imagine it's happened to everyone, and it can generate a lot of frustration. So imagine when we extend it to so many. And here, this is, as a consequence of this frustration, one needs to develop one's own wisdom. So it's only by learning your own language that I can help you. I'm finding the way to adapt myself to you, to help you help yourself. So to help you, I need to have more wisdom. I need to be more stable. First, I need to reach that state, that so-called state of Buddhahood, to be able to help you. Otherwise, I won't be able. Otherwise, I just, close. And then I just stay to myself, and as we say, if you can't help, at least don't harm. I just stay a little bit to myself. I try to act correctly, have a good contact, take care of the environment, to act with love with the people who are close to me. But I distance myself from others, because there's too much suffering in the world, too suffering for which I can't do anything. Because if I really start opening up my heart towards everyone, I mean, what can I do in front of all this selfishness, anger, and hate in this world? I mean, I can't even change the person next to me. No, it's true. So the only way to overcome this on a real level there's a red car. They're blocking the road and blocking the workers. It's the license plate of Verbania. So the only real way that we have to overcome and resolve this frustration is having tools that allow us to help anyone that we meet concretely. Having wisdom to know how to discern the best way to help whoever we meet. And this also requires another aspect, which is the wisdom that sees the limit that love has. I mean, no matter how much I love has a limit. No matter how much I love you, I can't make you happy. The only thing I can do is interact with you, and I'll do it in a way, how can I say, without ever without pulling back. I'll do what I can, always repeating again and again, without the expectation of making you happy or keeping you from suffering. Because have you ever heard, after everything I did for you, you're still suffering. After everything I've done for you, you're still not happy. It's almost as if, one throws in the face of someone else. So you don't love me. I mean, everything I've done for you, and you're not happy. And the other one on the other side says, if you could make me happy, I would be the happiest. But it doesn't depend only on you. So once I love someone, I take a deep commitment with joy to do everything I can to help that person to suffer less and to be happier. Remembering with clarity that it's a limit, I'm not going to get into that frustration of not being able to make you happy, because I just can't. I mean, just imagine how frustrated a Buddha should feel. A bodhisattva, how frustrated would a bodhisattva be, who has great love towards everyone? What makes it so they're not frustrated? What keeps them from being frustrated? Because there's a level of wisdom where they know exactly that he knows what they can do is to interact, and can't do anything else, because the frustration comes from an inconsistency between what I can do and this idealist image of what I should be doing. That's going we always go back to this metaphor of the falling leaf. Imagine a leaf that falls from a tree, and it falls in a certain position. And we ask ourselves, why did that leaf fall exactly there? Why that precise place? Not 1 centimeter to here or 1 centimeter there. Is it just a random position, or is it perfect? What determined the leaf falling exactly there? The atmospheric pressure, the wind, the child that was playing under the tree, the insect that was eating the leaf. There's an enormous amount of things when put together made the leaf fall at that time. The wind was going in that direction that brought the leaf to fall exactly there. So we could say, with a lot of we can be sure that the leaf fell in a perfect position. It doesn't mean that it creates interactions that would be better. Because when all these leaves fall, when the leaves fall in the rain gutters and block them, that's not a perfect position in the sense that it doesn't create problems. So when I say perfect, it doesn't mean that it doesn't create negative results. When I say perfect, it means that given the causes and conditions that are there, it's perfect in the sense it couldn't be different. Is that clear? Are we there? Are we following? Can we see do we see the position of the leaf and say that it's perfect? Now, let's just think of a person who's suffering. Someone close to us. I'm sure you'll find someone. Think of this present moment of that person and with all the characteristics of the moment, the life of that person. Is the life of that person just perfect, or is it just random? It is perfect. Doesn't mean that we're happy that it's like this. It means that it is like this because there's an infinite number of causes and conditions, interactions that brought it to this state. Okay, I don't want it to be like this anymore. What can I do? I can interact. I can talk. I can be physically present. I can express my feelings. I can interact with on a material level, with thoughts and words and actions. So to try to be a small part in this complex interdependence of this, in the life of this person, to help this person feel better. But the variables are so many that it doesn't depend on me. I am not the cause of the suffering, of their suffering, nor am I the cause of that person's happiness. I am one among many interactions that are present. And when one has this awareness, one doesn't go into the frustration of not being able to make the other one happy. Once one has the total clarity with himself that he does everything that he's able to do with the resources that he has. I don't know if this is clear. So it's said that the Buddha acts continuously to help to help any being through to have a positive interaction through the 4 generosities. He's showing himself with a material help, generosity of giving materially, with giving affection and love, generosity of giving love, helping other beings by showing, so he can protect others, protect them from danger, giving protection. And the last and the most important, by when the other is ready to receive, guiding the being to develop his own qualities, or giving the Dharma. Before being able to help, before being able to help the person develop love and generosity, etc., I need to be able to help with basic needs, you know, with materially, with emotions. So, you know, a Buddha can't go and just take away one's suffering. A Buddha can help by sharing, interacting. This is the only thing that he can do, by interacting materially, with words, with intention, with affection. This is the only way. So this takes away the frustration of not being able to do something. And we can do so much for anyone, but we can't take away someone's suffering and make them happy, the way that we would normally idealize. So together with love, we need to develop wisdom that understands the interdependence of phenomena. And when there's wisdom that understands the interdependence of phenomena, that allows us to be in harmony with every situation, even if we wanted that situation to be different. I don't know if that's clear. Because if we asked ourselves, if we asked the Buddha, do we want a Buddha? Does a Buddha want beings to be free from their suffering? Yes, because love and compassion is fundamental to enlightened mind. But we also say that an enlightened being is in perfect harmony with everything. So it's important to understand that to be in harmony with the situation means that I don't live it with frustration and suffering, but at the same time it doesn't mean that I necessarily want that situation to continue in that way. I see a situation of violence and suffering, for example. I'm in harmony with the situation because I see the perfection of that situation. I see that it's the result of a very complex net of causes and conditions that have generated and made that situation to be as it is. I don't want anyone to suffer, and I see the interdependence created between actions and results, etc. So what do? I try to interact in a way to diminish that suffering, to eliminate that violence. But there's no frustration, because there's a deep harmony that comes through the quote unquote it's not acceptance, it's understanding of that interdependence. Like saying, would it be better if selfishness didn't exist? Yes, but useless to cry over the fact that selfishness exists. Okay, yeah, it would be better if this wasn't like this or this wasn't like that, but it is like that. So a wise person understands and is aware of the things as they are, and is with the awareness of his own resources, acts positively to make changes. But you see look at what we can learn, what we can train in front of someone that we deem evil or someone that does something that we don't agree with in this verse, and we can go. There are other two verses that go in that same direction, and what I wanted to say has to do with this, with the following verse. I can't practice patience. I can't practice patience if I don't have objects of anger in front of me. When I find myself in front of someone and that person acts in a way that I don't like, I get angry, or I'm jealous, or I'm envious, or any kind of mental defilement arises within me, the situation that I'm living, the person and the way that they're acting, that's just a mirror that reflects inside of me my own conflicts, my own mental defilements, because I don't get angry because you do this or that other does that. I get angry because I have conflicts. I have my own anger that comes from my own selfishness that manifests when it comes into contact with one situation or another. So the situation in front of me is a condition through which my anger manifests. Because if I didn't have my own conflicts, I wouldn't react badly to that situation. So it's a mirror. What to conclude this verse, the important point is that we shouldn't be afraid of difficult situations. We shouldn't be afraid of people, beings who act negatively, violently, aggressively. Because when we find ourselves in front of situations like this, it's a marvelous opportunity to grow inside. If we're along the path, this is within the context of mind training. And for me, this is something marvelous, because it means that in reality, even when I'm in very experiencing adverse conditions, difficult conditions and situations, it's a marvelous opportunity to practice. In the past, there were practitioners that when they were in the past, I think maybe also in the present now, but there were certain practitioners that when they were in conditions that were very favorable and where everything was fine and they didn't have any unfavorable conditions, they intentionally looked for difficult situations to practice patience more, to try to face their selfishness, etc. So whenever I see beings instinctively cruel, overpowered by negativities, and their negativities and suffering, their non-virtuous actions, may I take care of them, cherish them as being as if they were a precious and rare treasure of gems to find.
No. Innanzitutto,
first and foremost, we can't expect there to be opening on the other side. The path is our own. We can't wait. We can't expect to have some kind of opening from the others. It's not that the other is happy and that we're not going to resolve the conflict. I mean, this is something more superficial. Our the objective of our training is to generate and keep the love and compassion, even when faced with someone who acts with aggression or hate. This is our training, and this, as a consequence, this makes us want to act in a way that's of benefit to others. So, to resolving the conflict, it depends if, on whether the other one is ready to resolve the conflict, wants to resolve the conflict. If we find the tools to face it, to face it in a healthy way. We're not talking about resolving problems. We're talking about our attitude in front of this reality. In this first case, I'm pretending, I'm hiding from myself, I'm pretending that there's nothing wrong. The second case, I let myself be taken by the anger and the hate. And in the third case, I reinforce my principles, my values, when faced with this situation, this difficult situation, with awareness, the awareness of the importance of love, the suffering of the other. There are many aspects that allow me to be in the middle of this situation and really see that this situation, that this person is acting in a way that I don't agree with, that I'm sorry about, that would be an object of aversion. Instead, is a wonderful opportunity to open my heart and generate love, independently of whether the problem gets resolved or not. The summary is, if I'm able to love my enemy, I'm able to love unconditionally, and to love my enemy, I don't need to make my enemy a friend and think, oh, well, actually my enemy is really done right by me, and convert him to a friend. No, I need to love beyond. I need to go transcend, go beyond what you do or not do. Love unconditionally, independently of whether you have done right or wrong by me. This requires the clarity that loving someone doesn't mean agreeing with one's behavior, that person's behavior, and we separate the actions from the person. I can condemn an action and still love the person. But we live in a context where the opposite happens, even our social system. When someone acts in a certain way, that where the common view of society, deems it wrong, what happens? The two things happen. One is one tries to we try to keep that person from doing that. So we take that person out of that context or society, and so that's why there are prisons, or you give that person a fine so they don't repeat that action. And there's another action. This is to punish. You've done something wrong. And you need to be punished. When in reality, what we don't want a person. We don't want the person to suffer for what they've done, but it would be wiser to think, I see that this action was wrong, and I try to find a way. To make sure that that person is better and doesn't repeat those actions that are harmful to himself and to others. But the well-being of the person who did those actions should be taken into consideration, and shouldn't be a kind of punishment because you've done something wrong. I don't know if that's clear. I'm convinced that even from a point of view of even from the economy and the court systems, it would all work better. Even talking in Brazil, talking to people who were working in security or policemen, etc. Talking to them, I asked them, in your opinion, if the São Paulo city, for example, they invest 5 times more. They invest the money invested in private security is 5 times greater than the money invested in public security. That to give you an idea of the situation. And once talking to them, who have people who know all of this reality very well, I asked, in your opinion, if we took just a part of that money, I don't mean all, but even just a part of this money, and we invested it not in the private security, but for taking care of these communities, where all this violence comes from, investing into the schools and into the economy, to help these people live with more dignity, really helping the people who are in trouble, instead of just building higher walls and stronger gates. So my point is, when there's the feeling of seeing the well-being of someone else, I mean, everyone should be taken into consideration. It's like, okay, you did something wrong, you should be punished, But how can we be sure that you don't repeat that act? I mean, we live in society; we need to have rules. But we should take care of everyone, not throw him out of our society because they've done something wrong. We need to act with love, even towards those who do wrong things. And when we find ourselves in front of people like this, it's an enormous opportunity for us. It's easy to understand, but it's really difficult to do, isn't it? But let's start with the small things in our daily life, these small actions that we think are wrong, and try to transcend our own view, our own ego, love others. I'll repeat one more time. We judge actions and not the people, and allow ourselves to love them. So, Rashin Pesemcheni, Didung Dampo Non Tongshe, Rinshin Terdan Trepeshin, Parkewe Chensin Sho. Whenever I see beings instinctively cruel, overpowered by negativities, their negative actions and suffering, may I cherish them, may I take care of them. May I take care of them, may I cherish them, as if they were precious treasures of gems, rare and difficult to find. Let's go to the next verse.
La shengi chatogi shekur la so mirikpe kyonka rangi lembadang gyalka shela bulwar sho.
When others, out of envy, treat me unfairly, with scolding, insults, and more, may I accept the loss upon myself and offer the victory to others. As we see, as we go on, the training becomes harder and harder. Because one thing is acting out of love towards someone who acts the way who acts in a way that we don't agree with. Another thing is keeping that loving feeling when they're acting aggressively towards me. So it's even more difficult. So let's try to look at this verse. Dala shinge chagoshchi shekur lasumi rigpe. When others towards me, taken out of envy, out of anger, jealousy, taken by any mental defilement. Here, envy is highlighted. But when someone acts aggressively towards me, taken by any mental defilements, shekur laso mi rigpe, and acts aggressively, verbally, or here it says scolding, insults, and more. More is also physical violence. When someone acts towards me, taken by his own envy, jealousy, arrogance, anger, whatever the mental defilement is, when someone taken by this mental defilement acts towards me with aggression and violence, verbal or physical, direct or indirect, with or without, with passively or actively, because there's also passive aggression. When someone creates conflict or fights, may I accept the loss upon myself. Kyonka rangi lempadang. It's here. I take the loss upon myself and I give the victory to the other. Let's try to understand this a little bit better. Have you ever seen two people who are like arguing? I've seen this on TV, like as a kind of I've seen it as a joke kind of thing. So like a sketch on TV where someone says it's red, no it's green, no it's red, and it's green, and then he skips. So the one saying it was red now says it's green, but then the other one then says no, it's not green, it's red. So the object of the discussion, of the argument, is not what's important. What's important is being right and being, opposing the other ones. I've seen like a conflict arise, and one of the two, out of with the arrogance or wanting to be right, one realizes that the other one is right, but doesn't let go, because I can't just give the victory to the other. And you can see this when you study Buddhist philosophy with debating. The way I studied and the way still study, what's not right, and within the debate it's not a good road to take. It can happen that someone in the debate realize that they've taken a wrong philosophical view, but doesn't want to let go, doesn't want to let go, and so to uphold that view just says absurdities. So instead of saying yes, okay, it was wrong, it just tries to hold on and says nonsensical things, like saying, for example, when someone tells a lie, sometimes to keep alive that lie, one needs to tell many, many more lies. But it brings many difficult results. Instead, one says, I was wrong, and then you can start anew. Every once in a while, it happens that when there's conflict between two people, at a certain point, as we just said, the point of the conflict is not the actual subject of conflict, but it's about being right. Or unfortunately, we've seen in these last years, these public debates among politicians. Once the modality was about, talking about specific subjects. What are the right choices to make, what to do here and there. So the very little that I see, and I see very little, this kind of thing, but it seems that these last years, in the end, these debates, these discussions are all about finding the weak points in the others. If we're talking about public education, what matter is my sexual orientation. What does my sexual orientation have to do with anything? Instead, we play with, trying to really, we try to discredit the other. What does it matter what I did 20 years before? I mean, so here the real interest here is not getting to a clear conclusion about the subject, but it's all about being right. It's really, it's quite terrible like this. It doesn't allow us to grow. It just increases our conflicts and our own levels of arrogance. So when we find ourselves in front of a conflict, what happens is offering the victory to others doesn't mean necessarily doesn't mean saying that the other is right. It's having the wisdom and the awareness to say, okay, what's the best way to be most beneficial here, or at least not be attached to being right. You take a position of like, no, I have to be right. No, instead try to find a compromise or a meeting point. Often when there are conflicts, there's no dialogue. There's just two monologues. The dialogue brings to a common point of view, and two monologues, it's just one is just trying to force one's point of view on the other. What's the training here? One, to not be attached to being right, to have to win the various conflicts, the various things that we find in general. And the other is to not hold on or grasp at the conflict. Okay, it's like you, in your opinion, it's like this. Okay, you think it's like this. I'm not going to use up my energy here. I think like this. You think like that. Fine. Or
Se questo nei monasteri.
If he's asking if the debate can increase one's arrogance in the monastery, it shouldn't. I mean, if it's lived as a learning path, it's in the West. When we see debates, when we see debates in the monastery, often people ask, the Westerners ask, who won, and instead the monks say, won, who won? I mean, nobody wins. We're here just to better our understanding. It can happen that through this debate process, one can one become more arrogant. Of course, that can happen, but it's not a common result. I mean, no, it's a learning path to better one's own understanding and knowledge, and debate is welcome. Hearing, confronting oneself with with someone who has different ideas is wonderful. One should be more concerned about staying with people who have the same point of view, because all that does is reinforce our own worldview. I mean, being with other people who think differently, and being with someone who has a different worldview, different point of view, and if we enter really into a dialogue with them, that can bring two things. Either we change our way of seeing, or reinforce our own. Because your way is different. Let's try, explain to me. You explain to me yours. I'll explain mine. You don't understand me. I have to try to find to show you a different perspective. Either I come to a conclusion. Maybe you have explained points to me that I hadn't seen before, or I get to the conclusion that my point of view is solid. And so we shouldn't be afraid of who is different. We should be afraid of being always with those who think like we do, because if our view is wonderful, but it's good to confront ourselves with to meet other people who have different ideas and different points of view. So once I found myself in a situation not too long ago where there was a strong conflict. There was a situation of someone who was acting in a certain way that from my point of view wasn't positive. It was a way that it was not correct in my way. I was generating suffering in others and in the person himself. At the same time, I couldn't find a tool that would allow me to resolve the problem easily. And we had spoken to Lama Ganchen. It wasn't a problem that had anything to do specifically with me or him directly, but we were involved, and so we were looking about how to resolve the problem. And I saw that none of the solutions would have really worked. And one day I was walking from the house down to the center, and I was thinking about this problem, and this verse came to me. Offer the victory to others. And I realized, my real priority, what was it? It was the well-being of everyone involved in that situation, but I was attached. Okay, that wasn't right. That person, couldn't act in that way. That generated a kind of aversion towards that person, towards that behavior. I needed to show that wasn't working, that was the wrong attitude, etc., etc. It's not right, here and there. But I found myself in a situation where if I had gone against, then then that person would have been more strongly against. So I needed to really balance this situation, and that would have created many important side effects or reactions. And so I saw my own dynamics within all this, and I said, the best thing here is to offer the victory to others, as Geshe Chekawa says. Offer the victory. And once I said, okay, I'm not going to stay attached to being right, but I try to do what brings the best results to all. And in this case, the best solution was offering the victory to others and pacify the conflict without getting into the details of of it. But we were able to find a solution where everyone was fine. But to find that solution, I had to go beyond, overcome my attitude of this is right, this is not right, because this shouldn't be like this, and that person shouldn't do that. I went beyond the loss or the victory, and I thought, what's the best for everyone involved here, and even in the end, everyone thought that they were right. Everyone thought that they had the victory, and let's say somehow we transcended the loss, the sense of loss. But it's difficult though to offer the victory to someone who doesn't act correctly. I saw this, and in this case, it worked perfectly. But the fundamental point here is to not stay attached to conflict. Even when someone acts with aggression towards you, with violence, it's not a reason to hate him, to react with violence or aggression, to enter in conflict with the other. It's difficult. But how difficult is it to get into a conflict and stay in a conflict? I mean, just as far as how much energy is necessary to not enter into a conflict when someone acts with violence towards us. It requires energy. We use up energy to not do that. How much energy do you use up when you actually enter into conflict with someone? At the beginning it's easier, but the amount of energy being in the conflict is much greater. The energy required much greater. So that's not an easy choice. You treat me with aggression, I have a choice. It's not easy, but how am I going to act? Do I want to get into it or not? And both require energy. I remember once I was down in town in Virginia. I was driving, and at a certain point I see someone. In my perception, there were two lanes, and there were lots of cars in front of me, and the other lane was totally free. So I took the free lane. It was a little sporty way. I took the free lane. At a certain point, I realized that actually all the cars had gone to the side because an ambulance was coming. So I got to the side of the road too. Then the ambulance goes on, and the traffic picks up again, and there's a car behind me, and every time the car would stop, someone in the car beyond would get out of the car and come towards me, but then the traffic would pick up again and get back in his car. At a certain point, I realized he wanted to say something to me, so I stopped and I waited, and he arrived. He insulted me. How did you to try to be so sly, and that you passing all of us, and for the ambulance coming? He just said everything to me you can imagine. I observed, and I'm grateful to that person, because first of all, I mean, it doesn't happen to me every day to be insulted, but thank you, in the sense that I could observe my reaction, and the one next to me, my first reaction was to be on the defense. Well, what did I do wrong? Well, I didn't even realize, this. Yeah. In that case, what I did, as I've done in many other occasions, was to say, just to maintain, like, beyond the fact that I don't like to be insulted or be treated with aggression, but I maintained my idea of what's right and wrong. And so to this person I said, you're right, I made a mistake. What I did was not right, and you're right, and I'm sorry. I ask, I'm sorry, I did something without knowing it, that I did something I shouldn't have done. And when you do it sincerely, not pretending, naturally, a big part of that conflict is already pacified. The second thing, am I at peace with myself in front of what I did? Yes, because I know with clarity that I didn't do anything with awareness to do something wrong, and I didn't do any harm to anyone, if not just to maybe make some people angry, those who saw this. But I don't feel like I actually did something that brought any kind of damage. So I'm fine with myself. I mean, and regardless of what you say, that doesn't change who I am. So the words that you say with aggression, that's a manifestation of your own frustration and your own difficulties and your malaise. But I'm not going to counterattack. Our tendency is first defense and then counterattack. And this person, at this point, the traffic started going, and they started honking horns behind us. And the person, I said, really, I'm sorry, you're right. And then the person got back in the car, and then the person sitting next to me started to look for weak points to criticize that person. Oh, you can see that the person is really stressed out. This person like this or that. What happens there? At a certain point, the enemy of the enemy becomes, so one starts to criticize and counterattack, and that just brings harm to oneself. Luckily, I was able to cut right away and say, listen, and the person was right. And it's just the story ends here without getting into, why this, that. And that situation showed me different things, and I'm really grateful to that person. My point is that when we find ourselves where someone treats us with aggression, our first tendency is to be defensive, and then we go to the counterattack. And this attitude to be on defense very often doesn't even allow us to see the point of the discussion. I see this in so many daily situations where, give it just a simple example, everyday example. Let's say that someone needs to paint a wall, and the color it was supposed to be yellow, and you get there, and then you see that they're painting the wall pink. This happened to me in India, and I bought beige paint, and the fringe was supposed to be Bordeaux, and instead they painted the facade pink. And I still remember the face of the painter. I wanted to say, "What are you doing?" And then I said to the person, to someone else, I said, "Did you know what happened? That because I was away studying. So do you know what happened?" And he said, "Oh yeah, the painter said that the beige was way too bland. So he went and bought paint himself to buy this other color. And I said, oh. So my first thought was, I'm going to have him redo it. I told him it was supposed to be like this, and he did it differently. And then afterwards, I looked, and I said, really, in my life, what does it change? What does it change my life if the facade is beige or pink? Really, nothing. Is it empty? It's empty of intrinsic existence, isn't it? It depends on the value that I'm attributing to it. If for one is beautiful, and for another is not. If he had done it black, maybe it'd be different. After just a few days, one would get used to it. It took me a little bit longer than that, but so I saw that as an opportunity to learn something and to not be attached to how things are supposed to be. Okay, it's fine. Okay, in India, things like this happened all the time. Then you talk to the painter. Okay, next time, that's not good. We talk to each other. We explain. But this, I'm talking about our inner process and how attached we are to being right, our way of being, that often that brings so many other problems and conflicts when we try to impose our view. So when we find ourselves in situations where people treat us with aggression, we should try not to put ourselves in the position of being on the defense. And as I was saying before, sorry if I skipped this. So as I was saying before, so if the wall is supposed to be yellow and I see that they're doing it pink, and then I go to the person and say, no, you're painting it pink, but it should actually be yellow. I'm not judging you. I'm talking about the color of the walls. But often what happens, but I didn't want to make a mistake, and when someone feels, one goes on the defense. I mean, I don't want to know about the whole story of the how and the why. I'm just telling you that the wall should be yellow. If you and maybe you explain to me why it should be pink, then I can listen, maybe even and tell you you're right. But we're talking about the color of the walls and not the people. And very often it becomes personal. Oh, but they gave me this color, so it's not my fault. Okay, we're not talking about whose fault it is. I'm just telling you what the color of the wall should be. And sometimes people tell you the whole long story, to be on the defense, when I don't need to know the whole story, about why why the wall is now becoming pink, or what you thought, what you weren't thought, why it's not your fault, if it's better that it's pink, let's talk about it. Otherwise, let's make it yellow. But without getting into who's right, who's not right, and having to defend one's own person, because no one's attacking the person. But I see that this happens often. So when we find ourselves in front of someone who treats us with aggression, who comes against us somehow, first of all, we shouldn't, let's try not to be on the defense, and much less on the counterattack. Try to see what's the best way to resolve it for the common good, without being attached to being right or having the victory. Instead, okay, I let you do it. You want to do it that way? Do. And just which consumes, it uses up more or less energy. I've seen, it's happened to me, I've seen people, insisting on wanting to do it in one way, and I, when I see that it's not working, or or if maybe we don't know, so let's try, and if it doesn't work out, we can do it again, and if it doesn't work out, then we help and we try to do it another way, without saying, "Oh, I told you so," like this. So, what takes up more energy? What brings more benefit in the end? Very often, staying attached to being right, or being the one who has the victory in the middle of this conflict, it uses up much more energy and doesn't resolve the conflict. Instead, just think about the good of the other, and our own good, and we think, what's the best way to interact positively. But we need to distance ourselves a little bit, distance ourselves from our point of view and that attitude of being on the defense or counterattack.
A me poco mi importa di quella persona.
So, who cares if the person thinks that I made a mistake or not? I said I was sorry. I didn't do it expressly. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. And it's just, it ended there. And if you agree or you don't agree, or you accept it or not, I don't need to get... I don't need to go out of my car and then go to that person and say, now you need to ask her for forgiveness because you spoke to me with so aggressively. No, we just end it there. We just go on. Let's not stay. Let's not grasp at the problem. Let's go towards the solution and the common good. Let's not stay attached and grasping at this problem. There's just thousands of examples that we can give. It reminds me of, with the construction of the temple, how many situations where someone did something that created then difficulties with others. What I always tried to do was, okay, let's not look at who's to blame. Let's just go towards the solution and to say, oh no, because you shouldn't have done this, or if you ever did something you shouldn't have done, I'd say, can you resolve it like this? But in front of a situation, the point isn't who the guilty one is. The question is how it can be resolved. What's the best solution given the situation in which we find ourselves? Because often we just stay, we just stay grasping at conflicts. In this verses, there are two fundamental characteristics. One is maintaining love and not judging the person, but the action, even when someone acts with aggression towards us. Second, to act thinking of the common good without being attached to being right, without being attached to having the victory. Is that clear? It's simple, but it's not easy. And I just repeat one more time, we need to start practicing with the simple things, with the daily situations, not with macro things. This is our daily situations, even with people that we see, people who do wrong, who harm us indirectly, who harm us even indirectly. But let's not judge the person, but the action. And it's not because you harm me that I I can't want your happiness. Lama Ganshin, often he would say, I've given my friendship to you. If you want to give yours to me, I'm happy, but I'm going to act the way I'm going to act the way I think is correct. And whether if you act with aggression, that's not going to make me act in that same way. I mean, I have a freedom of choice to act with aggression or not. I don't have the freedom, to I can't make you act in a certain way. But if you act with violence towards me, I have the choice to whether I want to love you or not, if I want to enter into this violence or not. No one can force me. No one has this ability to force me to not love someone or to have to love someone. The conclusion somehow in this training is to say it doesn't matter what happens, regardless of what happens. It's not a reason to not love you. It's very hard because in the middle, we find in the middle we find this obstacle of our own selfishness. But the training talks specifically about this, going beyond our own selfishness, our own ego. We're going to conclude here for this morning. Let's stop for lunch.
Drove Munsela Takto ne Gyur Chi Yedam Guru Ratna Mandrala Kamniryata Yami Kewa Kunto Yanda Lama Dan Rame Chekipela Longche Chin Sadan Lamge Yunden Rabzone Dorje Change Koba Nyur Tobsho Nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshing Ninsen takto delekpe Kuncho sumke jinge lob Kuncho sumke ngodrubutsol Kuncho sumke trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Omahun Tembalame Sangye Rinpoche, Kyobalame Tamcho Rinpoche, Trimbalame Gendo Rinpoche, Kyamne Kuncho Sumla Chopa Bulojo Sambo Pagyutra Shipa, Tuche Tempe Chinle Yarmoda, Pegerulo Zampezeb, Pandelame Shela Chopa.
Have a good lunch. Thank you to everyone.